The wine was a deep, blood-red Cabernet, and it clung to the sides of the crystal glass like a warning. Across the polished mahogany table, my sister, Chloe, laughed. It was a bright, musical sound that filled the cavernous dining room of Marcus's ultra-modern home, a glass and steel behemoth perched on a hill overlooking the sprawling lights of Lowe's Angels. Everything about the evening was designed to impress. The Michelin star-worthy meal, the hushed efficiency of the hired servers, and Marcus himself, radiating a confident, easy charm that seemed to captivate everyone. Everyone but me. I'd been trying to put my finger on the source of my unease all night. Marcus was handsome, successful, and by all accounts, utterly devoted to Chloe. He'd rest his hand on the small of her back, lean in to whisper something that would make her blush, and toast to the future Mrs. Thorne with a sincerity that felt almost rehearsed. Chloe, for her part, played the role of the adoring fiancée perfectly. She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and recounted charming anecdotes about their whirlwind romance. But I knew my sister. I knew the genuine, uninhibited joy that lit her up from the inside, and this wasn't it. This was a performance, a carefully constructed facade as fragile as the spun sugar dessert waiting on the sideboard. My gaze kept drifting to the heavy, floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, a cool California night had settled in, the city lights a distant, indifferent galaxy. Inside, we were in Marcus's world, a gilded cage where the air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and unspoken rules. His hand never strayed far from her, a constant, proprietary touch. When she reached for her water glass, his fingers would brush hers. When she looked at me for a fraction too long, he'd gently turn her chin back towards him. Small things, things anyone else would dismiss as affection. As a server moved to clear our main course plates, Chloe shifted in her seat. A slight, almost imperceptible adjustment. She nudged her plate forward an inch, ostensibly to help the server. That's when I saw it. Tucked just under the rim of the porcelain, almost completely hidden, was a small, tightly folded corner of a paper napkin. Our eyes met for a single, fleeting second. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes screamed a different message. A desperate, silent plea that chilled me more than the overzealous air conditioning. I needed a reason. My mind raced. "Marcus, this wine is fantastic," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Where's your restroom? I should probably splash some water on my face before we hit the dessert." He gestured vaguely down a hallway. Down the hall, first door on the left. As I stood, I let my hand sweep across the table, pretending to steady myself, and my fingers closed around the hidden napkin. It was small and tight in my palm. Walking down the sterile, art-lined hallway, I felt Marcus's eyes on my back. The bathroom was as opulent as the rest of the house, all marble and chrome. I locked the door, my heart pounding against my ribs. My hands trembled as I unfolded the small piece of napkin. The writing was stark, written with a frantic pressure in what looked like eyeliner. I knew that handwriting better than my own. I'd seen it on 1,000 birthday cards and silly notes passed in class. I recognized the distinctive, sharp loop of her 9, which always looked more like a lowercase g. The message was only 3 words: 911. Now. The cold marble of the bathroom counter pressed against my hands as I leaned on it, my knuckles white. 911. Now. The napkin lay on the pristine surface, Chloe's frantic scrawl a stark contrast to the room's opulent, sterile perfection. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, suffocating silence. Every spy movie cliché flooded my mind, cameras in the vents, microphones in the walls. Was Marcus watching me right now? A wave of nausea washed over me. I couldn't just call. Not from here. My phone felt like a brick in my pocket, useless and dangerous. Breathe, Liam, just breathe. Panicking helps no one, least of all her. I had to get us both out of here together. But how? A sudden illness on my part? Too weak. Marcus would offer a remedy, call his private doctor, and refuse to let Chloe leave my side. It had to be something he couldn't control. Something external, undeniable, and urgent. An idea, cold and sharp, cut through the fog of my fear. Our parents. It was the perfect, tragic excuse. A reason for both of us to leave immediately, no questions asked. Or at least, no questions Marcus could reasonably press without looking like a monster. I took one last look at the note, the words burned into my memory, then crumpled the napkin into a tight ball. I flushed it down the toilet, watching the evidence swirl away into the plumbing of this gilded cage. I splashed cold water on my face, stared at my reflection. My eyes were wide with fear. I forced them to narrow to adopt a look of grave concern. I practiced in the mirror, a furrowed brow, a downturned mouth. Plausible, worried. I could do this. I walked back into the dining room. The scene was exactly as I'd left it. Chloe nursing her wine, Marcus swirling his, the picture of domestic bliss. The air, however, was thick with unspoken tension. As I sat down, I pulled out my phone, angling it so only I could see the blank screen. I stared at it for a few seconds before letting out a sharp, controlled breath. "What is it?" Chloe asked, her voice a little too high. I looked up first at her, then at Marcus, injecting as much shock and worry into my expression as I could muster. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I just got a text from my dad." I paused, letting the weight of the statement hang in the air. "It's Mom. She's been in an accident. We have to go to the hospital." Chloe's mask of cheerfulness shattered. Genuine panic, raw and real, flashed in her eyes before she caught herself, remembering her role. She was a brilliant actress. "Oh my God, is she okay?" "I don't know," I said, standing up and pushing my chair back. "Dad's not making much sense. He just said to get there." "Chloe, we need to go now." Marcus rose slowly, his face a careful study of concern, but his eyes were cold, analytical. "Of course. That's terrible news. Which hospital? I can have my driver take you." "The test." No time for that," I said quickly, shaking my head. "We'll just take my car. It's faster. We just need to go." I walked over to Chloe and put a hand on her shoulder, giving it a firm squeeze that I hoped conveyed the urgency. "Play along, we're almost there." She stood, her movement stiff. "Yes, we have to go. Marcus, I'm so sorry to cut this short." "Don't be ridiculous, my dear. Family comes first," he said smoothly, but he didn't move to let us pass immediately. He looked from my face to Chloe's, a flicker of suspicion in his gaze. For a terrifying second, I thought he'd call my bluff, but then he stepped aside. "Keep me updated. I hope she's all right." "We will." "Thank you," I mumbled, guiding Chloe towards the front door. Every step felt like walking through cement. I could feel his eyes on our backs, a physical pressure. I didn't dare look back. We stepped out into the cool night air, the sound of the heavy oak door closing behind us echoing like a gunshot. We were out, but we were not yet free. The tires squealed as Liam took the first corner, the manicured lawns of Marcus's neighborhood blurring into a dark green smear. For a dozen blocks, the only sounds in the car were the hum of the engine and Chloe's ragged, shallow breaths. The pretense of their emergency exit had evaporated the moment the heavy oak door clicked shut behind them, replaced by a silence so thick it felt like its own entity. Then, a single, shuddering sob escaped Chloe's lips. It was a broken sound, the kind that tears its way up from a place of deep pain. Liam glanced over, his heart clenching at the sight of her. She was huddled against the passenger door, her body trembling, tears carving silent tracks through the flawless makeup she'd worn like armor. The perfect smile was gone, replaced by a mask of raw terror. "We're out, Chloe," he said, his voice rough. He reached across the center console, his hand finding hers. Her fingers were like ice. "We're out, you're safe." His words broke the dam. A wrenching cry tore from her throat, and she began to weep uncontrollably, her elegant dinner dress now a meaningless costume. "He knows," she gasped between sobs, the words tumbling out. "Liam, he knows I was planning to leave. He found the emails to the women's shelter. This morning, he was so calm. He smiled and said tonight wasn't just for our parents. It was a final test, to see if I could still play my part." Bile rose in Liam's throat. He tightened his grip on the wheel, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror. No headlights followed too closely, but the empty road felt menacing. He grabbed his phone from his pocket, fumbling to unlock it with one hand. "I'm calling 911 right now," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He tapped the screen and put the call on speaker, the jarring dial tone filling the car before a calm, professional voice answered. 911, what is your emergency?" "My sister, we just escaped her fiancé's house. He's been threatening her. We're in my car, a gray Honda Civic, heading south on Riverwood Drive. I'm afraid he might be following us." Liam's voice was steady, but his heart hammered against his ribs. "Okay, sir. Can you confirm your location?" As Liam gave the dispatcher the cross streets, Chloe leaned forward. "His name is Marcus Thorne," she choked out. "He has a black Mercedes G-Wagon. He told me if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure no one ever found me. Tonight, before you came, he took my phone and passport and locked them in his safe. He said from now on, he'd take care of everything for me, that I wouldn't be going anywhere without him." The dispatcher's calm voice was a lifeline in their sea of panic. "All right, ma'am. I understand. Sir, I want you to continue heading south. Do not go home. There is a police station at 1550 North Precinct Avenue. It's about 3 miles from your current location. It's well lit, and I'm dispatching a unit to meet you in the parking lot. Stay on the line with me until you see them." "We will," Liam confirmed, relief washing over him so intensely he felt lightheaded. He followed the directions, the voice on the phone a steady beacon in the darkness. The immediate threat of Marcus's house was behind them, but as Chloe's story unfolded in broken pieces, Liam knew their ordeal was just beginning. The blue and red lights of a waiting patrol car flashed silently against the brick facade of the North Precinct, a stark, rhythmic pulse in the quiet Seattle night. Liam pulled his Civic into a visitor spot, the engines ticking the only sound after he cut the ignition. For a moment, they just sat there, the flashing lights washing over Chloe's pale, tear-streaked face. The immediate terror of the chase had subsided, replaced by the cold, heavy reality of what came next. This building, with its promise of safety, also represented a threshold they could never uncross. "You ready for this?" Liam asked, his voice softer than he intended. Chloe nodded, a small, jerky motion. She didn't look ready. She looked like a cornered animal, exhausted from a long flight. But she unbuckled her seatbelt, her hands trembling. "I have to be." Inside, the station was sterile and smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed, casting a flat, unforgiving glow on everything. A burly officer at a high desk looked up from his computer, his expression neutral. "Can I help you?" We were told to come here," Liam said, stepping forward protectively as Chloe hung back. "I called 911, domestic situation. Dispatch said a unit would meet us." The officer's demeanor shifted subtly, a flicker of professional recognition in his eyes. He tapped a few keys. "Right, the call from the -5. Glad you made it safely. Officer Davis is waiting for you, this way." He led them down a linoleum-tiled hallway to a small, featureless room. It contained a simple metal table and a few chairs. It felt less like a safe haven and more like an interrogation room. A woman in a crisp uniform stood as they entered. She was in her late 40s, with a calm, steady gaze that seemed to take in everything at once. "I'm Officer Davis," she said, her voice even. "Please have a seat. Can I get you some water?" They both accepted, and the simple act of sipping from a paper cup seemed to ground them. Officer Davis sat opposite them, a notepad on the table. "I understand you're in a difficult situation," she began, her eyes focused on Chloe. "I need you to tell me what happened tonight. Take your time. Start wherever you feel comfortable." Chloe's breath hitched. Recounting the events in the car to Liam was one thing, verbalizing them for an official report was another. The words felt flimsy, inadequate to describe the suffocating dread she'd lived in. He found out I was planning to leave," she started, her voice barely a whisper. "He took my phone, my passport. He said," she trailed off, looking at her hands. "Tell her what he said about your job, Chloe," Liam urged gently. Chloe swallowed. "He told me I was nothing without him. that my career was a gift from him and he could take it away just as easily. He said no one would believe me over him. He's Marcus Thorne, he's respected. Officer Davis wrote, her expression unchanging. This kind of control, has it been going on for a while? It was slow, Chloe admitted, the words spilling out a little easier now. At first, it was just suggestions about my clothes, my friends. Then he'd get angry if I went out with my coworkers. He started checking my emails. He made me quit my book club. He said it was because he wanted to spend more time with me, that he worried. He made it all sound like he was protecting me. He isolated her, Liam added, his voice tight with anger. And tonight, Officer Davis prompted softly, was there a specific threat? This was the hardest part. Chloe's eyes filled with fresh tears. Before you arrived, Liam, he was so calm. He smiled and said that if I ever tried to embarrass him, he'd make sure I was the one who disappeared. He said it would be an accident. Like that hiker who went missing in the Cascades last year. He said they never even found a body. Then he told me to go put on my dress for dinner. The room fell silent. The vague, psychological torment had suddenly crystallized into a clear, chilling threat. Officer Davis stopped writing and met Chloe's gaze. For the first time, her professional calm was tinged with something fiercer. Thank you for telling me that, Chloe. That is exactly what we needed to know. The silence in the small, sterile room was a heavy blanket after Chloe's last words hung in the air. The confession had drained the last of her adrenaline, leaving a hollowed-out exhaustion in its place. Liam kept his arm around her, a silent anchor in the fluorescent hum of the police station. Officer Davis returned a few minutes later, her expression softening as she placed 2 plastic cups of water on the metal table. You did the hardest part, Chloe, she said, her voice calm and steady. Telling someone, now we make sure you stay safe. She pulled her chair closer. First thing tomorrow morning, we'll go to the court and file for an emergency temporary restraining order. It's a legal document that will forbid Marcus from contacting you, coming near you, your home, or your workplace. If he violates it, he can be arrested immediately. It's your first shield. Chloe nodded, but her gaze was distant, overwhelmed. The system can feel like a maze, Davis continued, seeming to understand. Which is why I've called someone to help guide you. Her name is Sarah. She's a domestic violence advocate. Her only job is to look out for your best interests, to connect you with resources, legal aid, counseling, housing. She's not a cop. She's on your team. Just then, a woman in her late 40s appeared at the door. She had kind eyes but a practical, no-nonsense air about her. Officer Davis, I'm Sarah. She stepped inside, her focus immediately shifting to Chloe. Chloe, Liam, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Her presence was immediately grounding. After Officer Davis left them to it, Sarah asked a series of gentle but direct questions. Chloe, what do you have with you? Any ID, bank cards, a phone? Chloe looked down at the expensive dress she was wearing, a final link to the life she'd just escaped. Nothing, she whispered, shame and fear mingling in her voice. He took my phone, my passport. My wallet is in my purse at the house. Sarah nodded unfazed. Okay, we can work on replacing all of that. The most important thing right now is a safe place to sleep tonight. She turned to Liam. Does Marcus know where you live? Yes, Liam said, the single word heavy with implication. And our parents' house, too. The reality of their situation crashed down on him. They weren't just running from a man, they were running from his entire sphere of influence. They were, for all intents and purposes, homeless. Then we use a shelter, Sarah stated simply, as if discussing bus routes. The locations are confidential. He can't find you there. They're designed for this exact situation. I've already confirmed a private room for you and your brother for tonight. It's clean, it's secure, and it's a start. He'll find me, Chloe murmured, her voice trembling. You don't understand. With his money, his connections, he'll find me. That's why we have to be smarter, Sarah countered, her tone firm but compassionate. The restraining order is a legal wall. The shelter is a physical one. We'll get you a new phone, a new number. We build a new life piece by piece. It is a long road, but you will not walk it alone. Sarah led them through a back corridor of the station, away from the public entrance, to a nondescript sedan parked in a private lot. As they drove through the sleeping city, the opulent prison of Marcus's mansion felt a world away. Chloe leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, the blur of Seattle's late-night lights like abstract paintings. Liam took her hand, his grip a silent promise. They were safe for now, suspended between a past that was shattered and a future that was terrifyingly blank. The shelter was a world away from Marcus's sterile mansion. It was located in an unassuming brick building in a quiet, residential part of Seattle, its address a closely guarded secret. Inside, the air smelled of disinfectant and faint, lingering traces of microwave popcorn. The walls were painted a pale, institutional yellow, adorned with children's drawings and flyers for support groups. It wasn't a home, but it was a fortress. For the first time in days, Liam watched Chloe's shoulders relax, a subtle but profound release of tension. Their room was Spartan. 2 twin beds, a shared dresser, and a small window looking out onto a brick wall. But it was theirs. That night, Chloe slept for 10 straight hours, a deep, exhausted sleep that felt more like a recovery than rest. The next morning, however, the relief was tinged with a heavy, gray depression. Sitting on the edge of her bed, she stared at her hands, the hands that once sculpted clay and held a paintbrush, now empty and trembling slightly. "I have nothing, Liam," she whispered, her voice raw. "He took everything. Not just the house and my passport, he took my life." Liam sat beside her, his own exhaustion a heavy cloak. "We'll get it back, Chloe, piece by piece. We start today." Later that morning, Sarah introduced them to Alina Vance, a pro bono lawyer with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that was immediately reassuring. In a small, private office at the shelter, Alina laid out the strategy. "The threat Marcus made is our anchor," she explained, her pen tapping a legal pad. "It's specific, it's credible. We'll file for the temporary restraining order this afternoon. The court will likely grant it ex parte, meaning he won't be present. He'll be served, and then a hearing will be set in about 2 weeks where he can contest it." Chloe nodded numbly, letting Alina's words wash over her. It was a plan, a concrete step. For a few hours, a fragile sense of hope began to bloom. That hope was shattered late in the afternoon. Liam and Chloe were in the shelter's communal kitchen when Alina found them, her expression grim. "I just received a call," she said, her voice low. "From Blackwood and Finch, it's one of the top litigation firms in the state. Marcus has retained them." Liam's stomach dropped. He knew the name. They were corporate sharks, ruthless and expensive. "They're not just contesting the TRO," Alina continued, her gaze fixed on Chloe. "They're filing a counterpetition. They allege you maliciously fabricated the story to extort money from him and have absconded with items of significant value." "What?" Chloe choked out, her face paling. "Value I left with the clothes on my back." Before Liam could process the legal assault, his phone buzzed. It was a text from a mutual friend. "Hey man, what's going on? Saw Marcus's post. Hope Chloe is okay." With a sense of dread, Liam opened Instagram. There it was. A professionally taken photo of Marcus and Chloe, smiling on a yacht, the sun setting behind them. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "Completely heartbroken. My beautiful Chloe has been struggling lately, and under the influence of her brother, she has left without a word. I am deeply concerned for her mental well-being. If you see her, please tell her I love her and just want her to come home safely and get the help she needs." He showed the phone to Chloe. She stared at the image, at the thousands of likes and comments pouring in, all offering sympathy to Marcus. The fortress walls suddenly felt paper-thin. He wasn't just coming for her legally, he was erasing her reality, painting her as unstable to the entire world. The fight wasn't just for her safety anymore. It was for her sanity. The courtroom felt cold, impersonal, a stark contrast to the emotional storm brewing inside Chloe. Months of living in the shadows, of hushed phone calls with Alina and sleepless nights staring at the ceiling of the shelter, had all led to this. Across the room, Marcus sat beside his lawyer, looking immaculate in a tailored suit. He met Liam's gaze with a flicker of smug confidence, the same look he'd worn at the dinner party that felt like a lifetime ago. When Chloe's name was called, Liam gave her hand a final, firm squeeze. "You've got this," he whispered. She took a deep breath, her steps steady as she walked to the witness stand. Eleanor began gently, guiding Chloe through the timeline of the abuse. It started with small things, criticism of her friends, her clothes, her art. Then came the isolation, the financial control. Chloe's voice, though quiet, was unwavering. She presented the evidence they had painstakingly gathered. Text messages where Marcus demeaned her, bank statements showing her complete financial dependence, and a tearful, notarized statement from a mutual friend who had witnessed Marcus publicly humiliate Chloe. Then came the napkin. Eleanor had it sealed in a plastic evidence bag. "Your Honor," Eleanor said, "this is what saved my client's life." Marcus's lawyer was ruthless on cross-examination. He brought up the social media posts, twisting her fear into paranoia, her desperation into a calculated scheme for money. "Isn't it true, Miss Miller, that you were unhappy your fiancé wouldn't fund a failing art career, and you concocted this story to extort him?" Chloe looked directly at the judge, ignoring both the lawyer and Marcus. "It's true I was unhappy," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I was unhappy because the man who claimed to love me took my phone, my passport, and my keys. He told me that if I ever tried to leave him, the only way I'd get out of that house was in a body bag. I wrote that note because I believed him. I still do." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. The raw, unshakable truth in her words hung in the air, dismantling the polished narrative Marcus had spent a fortune to build. 2 hours later, the judge delivered his ruling. The permanent restraining order was granted. The countersuit for theft and extortion was dismissed, citing a complete lack of evidence and labeling it a clear act of intimidation. It was over. 6 months later, the autumn air in Boston was crisp and clean. Liam helped Chloe hang the last of her paintings on the wall of their small, sunlit apartment. It wasn't a penthouse, but it was safe. It was theirs. The social media storm had died down, replaced by a quiet wave of support once the court's verdict became public knowledge. Marcus had faded from their lives, a ghost confined to the past by a legal document. "It feels right," Chloe said, stepping back to admire her work. She was enrolled in a local art program, and for the first time in years, she was painting for herself again. Liam handed her a mug of tea. "It looks right." She turned to him, her eyes clear and bright. She smiled, a real, effortless smile that reached her eyes and filled the space between them with a quiet, resilient joy. It was nothing like the smile she'd worn at dinner. This one was free,